What we can't do at a time that we're in two wars and we have a very determined enemy in Al-Qaeda, we can't stand down. We have to make sure that we have adequate defense.
So the White House would disagree with the Speaker on that particular
Well, I haven't
aspect.
heard what the Speaker had to say, so I'm not going to get into a debate with the Speaker. But the freeze that we're recommending is for discretionary spending.
State of the Union address tonight. The House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, coming out with reaction to one of the proposals we already know about, and that is a spending freeze for 3 years on non-discretionary spending. Now, here's what she said. She told Politico, quote, "Well, I think that if there's going to be a spending freeze, it should be across the board. That is to say, we all want a strong national defense. We want to fund it in an appropriate way," she said, "but we're not here to protect defense contractors. And the fact is, if we have to cut spending, we should subject every dollar to that same scrutiny." It's just one proposal already getting pushback from the House Speaker on the left. Let's bring in our panel about the State of the Union address. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. A.B. Stoddard, associate editor of The Hill, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Steve, it's a little unique to hear the House Speaker weigh in on the day of the State of the Union address about one of the proposals we know will be in there.
Right, and if you look at what she actually said, she's suggesting that defense spending is sort of goodies for defense contractors. So I think there's a substantive problem she has. But this perfectly encapsulates the president's first year, in my view. This has been his problem. His difficulty over the first year, and the reason that I think he finds himself in so much trouble going into the State of the Union, has been his own party. He's had huge majorities in both chambers of Congress, and he hasn't been able to enact his agenda. He hasn't been able to do the big things that he said he was going to do a year ago. And it's not because Republicans have been too partisan. This is a call you're hearing by Democrats all day today. It's circulating, I think, in the White House talking points. Republicans haven't been playing ball. That's simply not the case. The real problem the president has is bringing his own party along on an agenda that I think is so radical, it scared the centrists in his own party. So that's where his problem is, and he has people like Nancy Pelosi continuing to try to pull him left.
Maybe.
Of course, the liberals in his party are miserable, and for the Speaker to make a statement like that this afternoon, right before the State of the Union, it's really a shot across the bow, this freeze, which doesn't touch Medicare or Medicaid or education. It's not an across-the-board freeze, and obviously doesn't touch military, is unpopular in the liberal wing of the party, as it is in the Republican Party and in the center, as it is with everybody. And the president, knowing that the Congress is extremely unpopular, this is popping up in poll after poll, day after day, both the Republicans and the Democratic majorities in Congress, and the president, I think, will try to put some distance between himself and the Congress tonight. This spending freeze will be a big fight, a fight he'll probably lose. But I think that was an indication from the Speaker that the liberal wing of the party, which is very disappointed on many policy issues with the president, has had it.
Charles, let's step back 30,000 feet here about what you expect tonight, perhaps what he has to do.
Well, the president has a choice. He can do a genuine pivot to the center, the way that the Bill Clinton did when he suffered a defeat early in his first term, or he can fake it. I guess that he's going to attempt the second, and that is for two reasons. The first is that he is not a hostage of the party's left. He is a man of the left. Clinton was a man of the center. He'd long been in the DLC, which is the centrist faction of his party. Obama is a man, Harvard faculty, a club, 20 years in the pew of Jeremiah Wright, a friend of William Ayers, Rashid the Khalidi, a PLO propagandist. This is who he is. It's where he lived, and you saw it all in his agenda this year. It was a left-wing agenda. But secondly, it's a question of his vanity. He's a man who believes that he can still do the magic. He's a man who believes that with his silver tongue, he can talk Ayatollahs into giving up nukes. With his silver tongue, he can talk America into believing that you can expand health care by 30 million people and cut the cost at the same time. And a man who said even last week after the Massachusetts defeat, it was because of an insufficiency of communication with the American people. This is a guy who's been on the tube practically every night. This is a man who I think can fake a pivot and will at least attempt it and see if it works. And we saw a hint of that when he announced the freeze yesterday, which is in and of itself a phony and a fraud.
I had lunch today at the White House with the president and the other anchors who are covering the State of the Union address, and the overall tone was a little bit defiant. He says he's upbeat. There is a sense, A.B., that this White House is still going to push ahead or try to with health care reform because they've come this far and they're not turning back. What about that?
Well, they're making the argument. You heard the president's team all weekend long making the argument that the Democrats who've supported either the House bill or the Senate bill are going to pay for their support of those bills. And so at this point, they must jump off the cliff and at least get the credit for an accomplishment and hope that history vindicates that vote in the years to come in a less politically hostile environment. That's actually probably true. It's probably the case that they've already poisoned their records by supporting a bill that most Americans are still afraid of and maybe perhaps don't entirely understand. We are not going to see a pivot tonight, though, and I understand why the president was defiant. They've made it clear that they think that their agenda, that they have the right agenda and that they've failed to explain it. They're going to explain it one more time. So it's a repackage and it's a reframe, but it's not a retreat. And we won't see a big policy turn. It is literally some polishing, some substance, some style, and it might be he might be relying on the silver tongue. But I think that, but for putting a little distance between himself and the unpopular Congress, I don't think that we'll see anything new.
I should point out that lunch is off the record, so I can't get into quotes and everything he said, which is why I'm not telling you that. Steve, Rahm Emanuel, the chief of staff, just told CBS that the Massachusetts election, where Scott Brown beat Martha Coakley, we could have won, we being the White House and Democrats in Washington, could have won that Senate seat.
It's absolutely astonishing that they're continuing to say this. I mean, you've heard similar comments from Robert Gibbs, from David Axelrod. It's clear that this is the White House view institutionally. This is what they think. It is crazy.
What they take out of the election, that it was the candidate and not...
Yeah. And that it wasn't a repudiation of the Obama agenda, as Charles has pointed out several times. Scott Brown campaigned specifically to be the 41st senator against health care. He campaigned specifically against the administration's policies on Mirandizing terrorists, giving them rights and trying them in civilian trials. Issue by issue by issue, Scott Brown campaigned against the White House. They can say that all they want, but it simply doesn't make it true.
Final word.
If the president is under the impression that it's one more speech, one more attempt rhetorically, he's reaching a level of obliviousness which approaches clinical denial.
But in his mind, he's trying to what? Build up political capital that was lost from last week?
I think, I'd be reassured if I thought he was cynical in saying all this and believing otherwise, but if he believes it, I think he's lost touch with political realities, and in the end, meaning in November, he'll pay.